Hello and welcome to Elvenhome, and to this edition in which I concentrate really on trying to repair such a reputation as I had for doing things with electricity, and in trying to get the shuttle to work as I want it to do on the underground layout. There's updates a bit later on where we are with the underground layout right at the end, but over the last 4 days or so I've been working on taking the shuttle and getting it to operate a train and also to do something else as well, just to make sure that what I have planned for the underground layout in the station will work. So let's go back 3 or 4 days to when I started work on this on Good Friday afternoon. Undeterred by my spectacular success in fouling up all 7 units in one fell swoop, I have carried out my threat to take a look at to see if I can get the shuttle working. And what I've lashed together here just at the moment is a piece of 800mm long board which I had hanging around, which I've raised on some wooden battens, enough to give enough space to fit these detectors underneath, and I'll come back to those in a moment. The board is in its place. I'll put a little piece of film that I shot just so you can see what it looks like a bit closer. The detectors and the board are demonstrated on Heathcote Electronics YouTube channel, and I'll put links in the description to the relevant videos, because they'll explain them in more detail than I will. So what I need to do first of all is fix this piece of track down. This is a single length of flexi track which will actually be used on the main layout. I will drill pilot holes where I want these to come up, and these sit so that they're just underneath the track. So they've got to be put on, so that is sitting flush with the top, which will be interesting because those are 22 millimeters high. That's 6 millimeters, so I've got to find something 16 millimeters thick to be able to fit everything in together. And the spacers that I've got, the tallest one I've got is 15 millimeters, so I shall have to use several together to get the correct height. But I'll fix the track down, drill the pilot holes, and I can lift the track. The track's going to be screwed in because this is all temporary, so I don't want to permanently fix the track down in any way. Drill the 8mm holes that are needed to put the infrared detectors through, and then I can put the track back and fit these on. At that point I will, and then wire them in, and at that point I'll probably come back and show you where I've got to, because at that point I will be ready to send a train from one end to another. Assuming that stage works, and which I have no reason to believe it won't, and we've got the train going up and down, what I will also going to do is to have a go at fabricating a couple of, well, it could be the ones I actually use on the layout, but fabricating some signal lights such as I would use in the tunnel for the underground layout. So I'll come back when I've done this first bit of work and we can be sure that's working, and then I'll turn my attention, assuming that goes well, to having a go at building some of these signal lights. Well, as you can see, I managed successfully to wire everything in, which has been really, really useful now for when I come to build the layout and I'm able to put this on there properly. I'll put a short clip up as this gets towards the about halfway. I took some footage from underneath so you can see the indicator lights on the infrared turning on and off as the train goes over them, which is what is telling the shuttle where the train is. So this was pretty straightforward to put together, I'm pleased to say, and following the wiring instructions assiduously, everything appears to be working well. It does take a bit of adjustment. These two things here are the minimum and maximum speed, and this one here is the acceleration. And initially, for some reason, I'd set the minimum to be the same as the maximum. So of course there was no acceleration or deceleration, it was just hurtling up and down the line. However, reading the instructions, adjusting them until I got the thing working as I wanted, and this is the result. This is only a short section of track, and I don't think it actually gets up to its maximum speed before it hits the indicator to tell it to start slowing. So it's not whizzing up and down because I don't want it to whiz up and down. It's only a short section of track, and it was to make sure that this worked. So that is a real success. Hurrah. Now what I'm going to do, and this is only a day since the previous thing was recorded, so it hasn't taken me very long to do at all. Now I'm going to go away probably over the next couple of days and have a think about, number one, how I'm going to make the signals, and also just check over how I wire them in, because when I read the instructions again, the signals will go in here, but then although they will be linked to when the train is starting off, when this is telling it changing the power, there's not a direct link. This is not telling the signals to change as such. I think it's just a switch, so it's changing the switch, I think, but I need, as you see, I need to read all this a bit more carefully. But I'll get my wet towel and put it around my head and work out how all that's going to work, and also how whether I can use the heat shrink method to fabricate something that approximates the underground starter signals. So I'll come back again once I've done that. After the incoherent burblings at the end of the last session, I thought I really did need to sit down and try and draw out what it was that I thought I was doing. Today is now Sunday, so it's a day on from the last section, and I thought I would do this bit before I go on to actually try to get these things wired in and working, for two reasons, and I'll explain those at the end. I had to sit down and think again how everything is wired together. So for those of you that are good at doing electrical diagrams, I apologize that this is not industry standard, but it's good enough for me. So we have the positive and minus coming from the DCC supply. The positive needs to go to the center of each group of three terminals that sit on the shuttle board, which I showed you before. There's a long row of 12 of them because you can put 4 signals onto the shuttle board. So the positive, that's bringing the power into the switch, and either side is a switch, essentially the equivalent of a single pole double throw switch. So I need to be able to put for each one of these the positive of the red and the positive of the green light into either side, and acting on the signal from within the shuttle board, the switch will turn to the left or to the right, and either the red or the green should light up. There's a negative common, so I've shown this actually as the 4 negative wires coming from the nano LEDs going into a feed from the minus. In fact, what I decided to do was to join these two together, so I've only got 2 wires that need to go into the one there. And the bit that I've got to work out is how I'm actually going to wire that all together with terminal blocks or whatever I choose to use. So having got clear in my mind how everything needed to be put together, I set to work in doing the necessary soldering. The positive wires from each LED needed a resistor soldered in as well, so I've done that as well. So if I take one of these wires, I can bring both in so you can see they've both been done. The first thing I did was to put the red and the green together, and then I've got some very small heat shrink, and the purpose of this is really just to hold these two things together. This isn't necessarily what it will look like at the end. When I put it onto the underground layout, I may have to put something else around this. But at the very least, while I was doing the soldering, I didn't want these flapping about all over the place. And then I had the negative was fairly straightforward. On one of the wires, I think it was the red wire, the negative was black. That was nice and easy. On the green LED, the negative was white for some reason. But anyway, they were soldered together. There's no need for a resistor, so they're then soldered onto a piece of black wire to keep things simple. The red was fairly straightforward because on the red cable it was red, although rather confusingly on the green it was black. However, they now have red and green on them to show the color of the light rather than the wiring. So those were all put together. Now, if I've got this right, I should be able to get this to work. So I can make it change in the way that it would do in the switch from green to red. So I will finish today feeling quite successful that I have my lights ready to go. I think I know what I've got to do, and all I've got to do is, amongst my various bits and pieces of terminal blocks and goodness knows what else, is find a way of putting the wiring on in a temporary way on the board that you saw me using yesterday. But I will do that tomorrow, and all being well, we should see a train traversing from left to right as the signals change to tell it to go, and then coming back in, which would be jolly good. Well, as you can see, I've wired in the lights and everything appears to be working, which is somewhat of a personal validation that I can play around with electricity and manage to get it to work, which is good. This was no difficulty to wire them in. Well, once I wired them into the correct terminals. Instructions are very useful. I wired them in initially to the 2 at the bottom, but that's number 3 and 4. Of course, obviously, it's signal 1, signal 2, signal 3, signal 4. And so the lights just kept on red, which they would do, because there's nothing to make them change. Once I read the instructions and rewired them, the lights do indeed change. And the first light here stays green until it's triggered by the infrared third infrared system unit, and vice versa. Once it goes green, you'll see just as it comes to where this light is, it switches back to red. Now I'll have to think about how that works on the underground layout and possibly speak to Clive about where I would need to position, where I'm intending to position the I.dot units to make so that you don't have a green light on long after the train has disappeared. But what we have done now is to wire everything up basically as it will be on the underground layout, and we know and we've proved that we can get it all to work. I did also, I don't think I mentioned it before, I tested the other 2 I.dots, so I've got 2 more which are for doing the ghost station. I'm not going to try and build something that I can test that. I think I just have to, I'll deal with that when we get to the main layout itself. But this has been a very enjoyable 3 days, because it's still Bank Holiday Monday, in which I've wired all this in and got it to work, and it happily trolls up and down the line. One thing you'll notice, I put a coach on as well, just so you can see a bit more. But one of the interesting things, well, there's 2 interesting things. One of them was that when I put the coach on, I needed to increase the minimum speed for the locomotive. So obviously that adjustment is dependent on how hard the locomotive is working. The other reason I did it is because the beauty of this system is that it detects the moment something goes across the infrared. It doesn't have to be the locomotive. So as soon as the coach's, it's actually as soon as the coach's coupling hits that infrared detector, that it turns off. And that's really, really rather encouraging. So that makes life, that's one of the reasons I chose this system, because it makes it much easier in terms of controlling it, the underground train, in that it doesn't matter which way it's facing. As soon as it comes in and hits the relevant infrared detector, it will stop or slow down or whatever it is that I want it to do. And some of the other ones, I was wondering how I would control it, given that there's, I think, 2 DCC chips have to be put into it. But this I don't have to worry. It's really much simpler. Yes, you see, this has struggled to make the end. So with that, that's the end of this section. What I'll do now, I think, is we'll go back onto the main layout, because I've been having thoughts about what I might do along the leading edge behind where the control panel will be, and I want to share them with you. For this final section of the video, I wanted first of all to make good on my somewhat cryptic comment in the previous section, but also give you a few updates on various things which were outstanding at the end of the last video. So first of all, my musings. Now you may recall in the last video I was talking about using wood similar to this to create a back for this part of the frame, and thinking about what might go along here. And the more I thought about it, the more I disliked the idea of a piece of wood, in a sense, going in here. It was just too big and too heavy. And there's always been playing on the back of my mind that I would dearly love to get some lighting in at this edge to cast across the tracks. Again, in part to make good on the fact that there's not a lot of lighting in this area. Which I think, in fairness, actually, in the real world, in Steam, I'm not sure how well lit this area would have necessarily been anyway. And this has coalesced over the last couple of days that I think what I'm going to do, but I'd be interested in views, is build what is essentially a row of low relief buildings from just where my finger goes off, just where the tunnel ends, all the way along. I don't know if you can see this far, but right up to more or less the buffer stops on the head shunt, of varying kind, but probably industrial more than residential, but I'll see. And to do that, so there'll be low relief, but probably of this width here, which is around 15 millimeters, all the way along, and to light some of those buildings. And possibly, well, including, I think, putting some exterior lighting on the building, which will cast light onto here as well. And I think that would look quite good. Now, the only thing that was in my mind was, what do you do on the back of them? Because it's going to look rather odd, little half buildings. But I think what I'm going to do is that they will probably be fairly plain brick backs. And it occurred to me to get some O-gauge posters similar to the ones that are by Weathertop Station, and put those on the back, which would, because I rather like those posters, but you can barely see them where they are, and that, you know, so you would just have a stone wall with lots of posters on them, which would mimic then these plates. When I bought the plates, I think I pretty much cleared out anything that I would dearly like to have. So there's not more of them. But I think, though, the stickers from, I think it's Trackside Signs, I think is the company, might be just the thing. That's what's in my mind. I'd just be interested in your views. And it involves a bit of scratch building, which I think would be fun. I made contact with the person that's going to build it for me, just to see how things were going just before Easter. And he, as I knew was the case, that he was going to be very busy, a large commission was just finishing, and he was hopeful that just after Easter he would be able to get to start designing my layout, which is roughly the kind of time that, to be fair to him, he said to me. So that's all proceeding according to plan. But good communication, so I'm not troubled at all by that. I've also spoken to Clive Heathcote, having sent the units back to him, and he similarly is very busy, but he'll be looking at those fairly shortly, and we'll see whether they're repairable. If they're not repairable, I'll just buy new ones. It's a pain, but it's not the end of the world. I can just buy another 7 and that will do the job. So that's proceeding sort of according to plan, except for the Heathcote stuff, because of course I shouldn't have blown them up in the first place. The other thing to tell you, and of course the train that I want to show you is right around the other side of the layout. It'll be round in just a moment. Bachmann, I was very impressed with Bachmann. I sent my loco off. As you know, the standard 5, the sound fitted standard 5, was refusing to play. So I sent it off to Bachmann, and I was given something like 2 or 3 weeks for it to be fixed, but it was back with me within a week, which I thought was really impressive. It apparently had an improperly adjusted drawbar. But I don't care what it had. They fixed it, and it only cost me $29.95, which is the basic cost. And as you see, it is now proceeding past you. At its rear, some of you may have spotted is a Royal Mail travelling post office coach. Now I've been after one of these for quite a while, and I don't know if you've been trying to buy them, but when they come up on eBay, invariably they go for, well, 70, 75 pounds, something like that. And although I want one, I'm not sure I want one that much. But the Saturday before last, there were two model railway shows on near Edinburgh. One was the Linlithgow N-Gauge show, which I went to, which was good. It's always good to see just an N-Gauge show, and it's really good that Rainbow Railways support it so well. But there was also one run by the Pentland Model Railway Club, the Lothian Model Railway Show, which for this year had moved to the Heriot-Watt University campus that's to the south of the city. And coming back from Linlithgow, a quick change from train to bus at Haymarket, and I was able to go to the Pentland Show. And at the Pentland Show, there was a trader selling N-Gauge second-hand, and there was this TPO, which is about to come past you again, for £30. Well, that was too good an offer to look at. And I also picked up a BR Maroon RMB, a buffet, which will go very well with my other rolling stock, and that was 23 quid. So that was a really good day out at two cracking model railway shows and picking up the TPO, which I'm really pleased with. And it, of course, is attached to the Express, and it will be dropped off at Darlington to join the mail train south a bit later. So I think that brings you up to date with everything where we are. I hope by the time of the next video to have certainly had a go at doing a mock-up, I think, of what I want to have here. I would hope I may even have had the repaired units back and have got on with a bit more of the control panel, because until I've got those, there really is no point in me trying to do anything else. It just doesn't make any sense, really. And we'll see where we've got with that, and I would hope maybe even some more information about the underground layout. So if you've got any comments, please do let me have your comments, particularly about what I'm proposing to do along here. That would be really helpful. And if you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done, because there's going to be quite a lot, I think, that I'm going to be doing both on this layout and for the new one, which I would hope to be able to get on and start thinking about building, well, hopefully before the middle of the year, or if all goes well. But until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.